All right, guys, let's jump into chapter 8 today out of the Walters textbook. We're going to talk about emotional health and your wellness. Now, throughout history, God's people have faced challenges with both courage and cowardice. Christians have always experienced a mixture of emotions. They have been filled with peace and anxiety, exhilaration and depression, and love and hatred. Now, there are six basic emotions: fear, happiness, surprise, sadness, disgust, and anger. Our emotions can be displayed by our facial expressions. Facial expressions are called macro expressions when the emotion is singular in nature, meaning that only one primary emotion is present and there are no efforts to conceal that emotion. Micro expressions are more complex in nature, often concealing multiple emotions. As humans develop socially, they acquire the ability to display favorable emotional expressions while muting socially unacceptable ones. An example would be, you might look happy and joyful on the outside, but in all reality, on the inside, you are completely distraught and unhappy. In her classic book on death and dying, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified 5 stages of grief that individuals experience when death or loss occurs. The first stage, denial. There's shock, confusion, fear. In denial, this is seen as a type of emotional protection that allows pain in limited doses. In this initial stage, individuals refuse to accept the reality of a final loss. The second stage is anger, and is often directed towards one person or the loved one who has died or left, or individuals in authority such as parents or doctors that could have or should have intervened. This leads to bargaining, questioning, negotiating with God, struggling with the fact of the loss. But when bargaining fails, depression sets in and all seems hopeless. They're overwhelmed and feel alone. The fifth and final stage is acceptance. And within this stage, an individual is not okay with the result or circumstances, and they don't understand why somebody left or why they died. But what they do is accept is that there is a real loss. It's final and it's permanent. And it's time to move on. Psychologist Abraham Maslow focused his studies on what constituted positive mental health. His theory argues that humans have a series of needs, some of which must be met before they can turn their attention towards others. Certain universal needs are the most pressing, while more acquired emotions are of secondary importance. He classifies these needs through the following stages: physiological needs or safety needs, or survival needs, pardon me. Needs of this physiological level are basic. They include items like air, sleep, water, food, clothes, and shelter. These are the first order needs that must be met continuously for the individual to feel satisfied. Once a person's physiological requirements are met, the next need that arises is for a safe environment. Our safety needs are apparent even in early childhood, as children have a need for safe and predictable environments and typically react with fear or anxiety when these are not met. Maslow pointed out that adults living in developed nations, safety needs are more apparent in times of emergencies. But this need can also explain why we tend to prefer the familiar. We don't like change. This is things like we purchase insurance and contribute to a savings account for any emergency situation that might come up. The love and belonging level is the beginning of interpersonal relationships, and the overall goal for meeting these needs is social belonging. Such needs include both friendships, family relationships, and intimate relationships with a partner of choice. The absence of this love results in feelings like loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Our esteem needs involve the desire to feel good about ourselves. According to Maslow, esteem needs include 2 components. The first involves feeling self-confidence and feeling good about oneself. The second involves feeling valued by others. That is, feeling that our achievements and contributions have been recognized by our peers. When people's esteem needs are met, they feel confident and they see their contributions and achievements as valuable and important. Self-actualization refers to the feeling of fulfillment, a feeling that we are living up to our potential. One unique feature of self-actualization is that it looks different for everyone. For one person, it might involve helping others. For another, it might involve achievements in their art, their field of art, or their field of employment. Essentially, self-actualization means feeling that we are doing what we believe we are meant to do. Now, the ability to manage one's own emotions, communicate emotional states to others, and pick up on the emotional condition of others are essential skills that can be classified as emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence consists of a wide array of competencies and skills that drive leadership performance and consist of the following 5 areas. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand personal moods, emotions, and drives and the effect of them on both self and others. Self-awareness depends on one's ability to monitor one's own emotional state and to correctly identify and name the emotions being felt. Developing this ability is essential for realistic self-assessment and builds self-confidence in the ability to take oneself less seriously. Self-regulation is the ability to control or redirect disruptive emotional impulses and moods. It involves the ability to suspend judgment and delay action to allow time for thought. Those with this ability will frequently demonstrate trustworthiness, integrity, comfort, and openness to change. Internal motivation is about working with and for an inner vision of what is important, a curiosity for and desire for learning and development, a drive that goes beyond external rewards such as money or status. It's intrinsic. There's often a strong drive to achieve, optimism even in the face of failure, and organizational commitment. There are also risks, though, particularly in the presence of an undue sense of perfectionism. Empathy relates to the ability to understand the emotional makeup of others and the skill to treat people according to those emotional reactions. It includes skills in building and maintaining relationships with those that we come into contact on a daily basis. Social skills. This involves the ability to manage relationships, build networks, find common ground, and build rapport. It will often help when leading change, being persuasive, building expertise, and getting great performance from your staff members or your team members. Now, mental health is a person's condition in regard to his or her psychological and emotional well-being. According to the most recent annual report from the American Psychological Association, the young people that make up Generation Z, or those born from the years 1995 to 2015, are less likely than previous generations to say that their mental health is in very good condition. The most prevalent mental health issues that college students seek treatment for are depression, stress, interpersonal functioning, grief and loss, and mood instability. The factors that students reported as negatively affecting their academic performance include stress, anxiety, sleeping difficulties, depression, concern for a troubled friend, relationship issues, financial problems, or the death of a family member. There is good evidence to suggest that spiritual faith provides support for positive mental health. However, it does not eliminate distressing and painful events from occurring. Christians are not immune to emotional distress and mental disorders. Even Mother Teresa was not immune from emotional pain. The passage on the slide is a quote from Mother Teresa's private journal, which was discovered after she died. There is good evidence that the majority of individuals who embrace a religious faith benefit from spiritual resources. In addition, higher rates of religious faith are strongly correlated to lower rates of suicide and an increase in levels of coping with stress. Stress is viewed mainly as being undesirable. Nevertheless, it is essential for human development. Humans are unable to improve physical fitness without stressors on their heart, lungs, skeleton, and musculature. Yet, too much stress can be detrimental, as in the case of overtraining. And as with physical training, the same is true for psychological stress. Stress is the mental, emotional, psychological, or physical responses to real or perceived demands. These responses come from real or perceived stressors. Albert Ellis divided stress into three components: the ABCs of stress: activating events, beliefs, and consequences. Activating events are triggers that cause us potential stress. As previously mentioned, there are different types of stressors. There are the life event stressors, such as death of a loved one, which are fortunately fairly rare. The majority of us would find these life events difficult and stressful. Then there are the more common stressors, such as daily hassles. Not everybody exposed to these daily hassles finds them stressful, and this is partly because of our individual beliefs, thoughts, and perceptions about those daily hassles will determine if the event is stressful or not to us. Beliefs. We use our beliefs to interpret what is happening to us. These beliefs may be accurate, possible, flexible, and optimistic. These types of beliefs and thinking skills can help to reduce stress. However, a lot of beliefs can be in the form of automatic negative thoughts, and if they are negative, inflexible, and pessimistic, then this can exacerbate any stress that you are under. Consequences refer to the feelings that occur as a consequence of our beliefs and self-talk in response to the activating event. The consequences can be in the form of stress, anxiety, depression, anger, irritability, aggression, fear, worry, and frustration. Stress can be subdivided according to its origin, where it comes from, where it develops, such as going on a first date, accepting an award in front of a large crowd, getting married. These are generally considered positive activators and are thus called eustress. Eustress is a positive stress with little or no perceived threats. Now, coping with an illness, having relational conflicts, final exams, or going to the dentist are labeled as distress because the events are largely viewed as negative in origin. Now, measures of the duration of an individual stress, there's acute stress and chronic stress. Acute, obviously shorter. Chronic, over a longer period of time. Traumatic stress. Traumatic stress is when one experiences a major automobile accident, witnessing a shooting, being a victim of assault, or being caught in a natural disaster can lead to traumatic stress. The fight or flight response. Now, this refers to a physiological reaction that occurs when we are in the presence of something that is mentally or physically terrifying. The fight or flight response is triggered by the release of hormones that prepare your body to either stay and deal with a threat or to run away to safety. The physiological and psychological response to stress prepares the body to react to the danger. In response to the acute stress, the body's sympathetic nervous system is activated by the sudden release of hormones. This reaction results in an increase in heart rate, blood pressure, and breathing rate. You can probably think of a time when you've experienced this fight or flight response. When you face something frightening, you can feel your heartbeat quicken. You may start breathing faster, and your entire body becomes tense and ready to take action. The fight or flight response can happen in the face of an imminent physical danger or as a result of a psychological threat, such as trying to get the courage to give a big presentation at school or work. Physical signs that can indicate the fight or flight response has kicked in include dilated pupils to allow more light into your eyes for better vision of your surroundings. Paler flushed skin, blood flows to the surface areas is reduced and is increased to the muscles, brains, legs, and arms to allow for your physical action. Rapid heart rate and breathing, heartbeat, and respiration rate increases to provide the body with the energy and oxygen that it needs to fuel a rapid response to danger. Trembling, the muscles tense and become primed for action, which can cause trembling and shaking. The fight or flight response plays a critical role in how we deal with stress and danger in our environment. When we are under threat, the response prepares the body to either fight or flee. The fight or flight response can be triggered by both real and imaginary threats. While the fight or flight response happens automatically, that doesn't mean that it always is accurate. Sometimes we respond in this way even when there is no real threat. Phobias are good examples of how the fight or flight response might be falsely triggered in the face of a perceived threat. Understanding the body's natural fight or flight response is one way to help cope with such situations. When you notice that you are becoming tense, you can start looking for ways to calm down and relax your body. Stress is a common occurrence. While you can't remove every single stressor from your life, it's possible to manage stress and maintain your health. This is important because stress can cause mental fatigue, irritability, and insomnia. But even if you know the physical effects of stress, you may be unaware of the different stages of stress known as general adaptation syndrome, or GAS. When you understand the different stages of stress and how the body responds in these stages, it's easier to identify signs of chronic stress in yourself. GAS is a three-stage process that describes the physiological changes that the body goes through when under stress. Hans Sele, a medical doctor and researcher, came up with a theory of GAS during an experiment when he observed a series of physiological changes in the rats after they were exposed to stressful events. With additional research, he concluded that these changes were not an isolated case, but rather the typical response to stress. He identified these stages as alarm, resistance, and exhaustion. Understanding these different responses and how they relate to each other can help you cope with stress. The alarm reaction stage refers to the initial symptoms that the body experiences when under stress. We just mentioned the fight or flight response, which is a physiological response to stress. This natural reaction prepares you to either flee or protect yourself in dangerous situations. After the initial shock of a stressful event, the body begins to repair itself in the resistance stage. The body releases a lower amount of cortisol and your heart rate and blood pressure begin to normalize. Although your body enters this recovery phase, it remains on high alert. Some stressful situations continue for extended periods of time. If you don't resolve the stress of your body and remains on high alert, it eventually adapts and learns how to live with a higher stress level. In this stage, the body goes through changes that you're unaware of in an attempt to cope with the stress. Signs of this resistance stage include irritability, frustration, and poor concentration. Your body continues to secrete the stress hormone and your blood pressure remains elevated. You may think you're managing stress well, but your body's physical response tells a different story. If this resistance stage continues for too long of a period without pauses to offset the effects of stress, this can lead to the exhaustion stage. This stage is the result of prolonged or chronic stress. Struggling with stress for long periods can drain your physical, emotional, and mental resources to the point where your body no longer has strength to fight stress. You may give up or feel your situation is hopeless. Signs of exhaustion include fatigue, burnout, depression, anxiety, and decreased stress tolerance. The physical effects of the stage also weaken your immune system and put you at risk for stress-related illnesses. GAS can occur with any type of stress. Stressful events can include a job loss, medical problems, financial issues, family breakdown, and trauma. But while stress is unpleasant, the upside is that gas improves how your body responds to the stressors, particularly in the alarm stage. The fight or flight response that occurs in this alarm stage is for your protection. When stress is short-term or short-lived, the alarm stage isn't harmful. But this isn't the case with prolonged stress. The longer you deal with stress, the more harmful it is to your health. Once you've entered the exhaustion stage, prolonged stress raises the risk for chronic high blood pressure, stroke, heart disease, and depression. You also have a higher risk for infections and cancer due to a weaker immune system. The inverted U theory proposes that performance improves as arousal levels increase, but there is a threshold point. Any increase in arousal beyond this threshold point will worsen your performance. At low arousal levels, performance quality is low. At extreme high arousal levels, quality will start to decline. Now, the American College Health Association reported that more than half of all college students rated their level of stress as above average. According to data in a 2018 study, top stressors for college students attending Christian colleges and universities include the following: academic work, concern for the future, spiritual challenges, interpersonal relationships, and financial concerns. Students attending secular schools saw stressors that included academic work, personal issues, financial concerns, personal appearance, and concern for their future. Now, we often use the term hardy to describe certain types of plants. Hardy means capable of surviving unfavorable conditions. Used to describe humans, stress hardy means keeping calm under pressure, being committed, having control, and accepting change. Commitment is not giving up, having positive attitudes, being faithful, and presenting a fighting attitude. Control means being courageous, being patient, and knowing when to act or not react. Challenge is how one perceives change. Hardy individuals view change as inevitable and recognize the need for flexibility to meet the demands of today's ever-changing world. Now, I think almost everybody feels some level of anxiety, whether it be trying to pass an exam, juggle personal relationships, finish a big project at school or work, struggling with financial pressures, or worrying about their future. The following are a few different anxiety disorders that people have to deal with. Social anxiety disorder. Now, this usually begins during adolescence years in individuals who are extremely shy. Individuals with this disorder feel intense fear in many common social situations, such as attending class, dinner parties, or even speaking to a cashier at the grocery store. Panic disorder. Someone who suffers from a panic attack generally sees it start abruptly and last less than 10 minutes, leaving the person terrified and exhausted. Symptoms include a sense of doom or impending death, increased heart rate and respiration, chills, hot flashes, shortness of breath, stomach cramps, chest pain, and difficulty swallowing. Panic attacks are unpredictable. A phobia is an intense, irrational fear of something that poses little to no threat or actual danger to a person. Many times a person that has a phobia realizes that their fear is irrational. However, even thinking about facing that feared object or situation brings on high anxiety. Now, in some cases, traumatic stress may occur weeks or even years after the triggering event, as in the case of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD. PTSD, often associated with veterans returning home from war, can develop after a person experiences a shocking or dangerous event. Common triggering events include military combat, sexual abuse, unexpected death of a close family member, serious accidents, or natural disasters. Signs of PTSD can range from flashbacks to nightmares, panic attacks to eating disorders, and cognitive delays to lowered verbal memory capacity. Many trauma survivors also encounter substance abuse issues as they attempt to self-medicate the negative effects of PTSD. In some cases, memories of trauma become difficult to process while anxiety increases, all causing the individual to re-experience the feelings associated with the trauma as if it were occurring in the present. Generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD, usually starts during one's teen years. Students with GAD often dread going to class because they cannot seem to keep their mind focused due to incessant worrying. In addition, even when exhausted, students report not being able to fall asleep due to stress and high anxiety. And additional symptoms include feeling that one worries more than one should, having a hard time concentrating, easily startled, trouble falling and staying asleep, having headaches, muscle and stomach aches, being irritable and short, and being lightheaded. GAD is treated with a combination of psychotherapy and medications. Life is full of moments that can make one feel defeated or lost. Most of the time, after a period of anger, frustration, and sadness, this mood lifts and we continue with our day. However, sometimes we get stuck in a rut and cannot free ourselves from dismay. Depression presents itself in several different forms. Major depression is a persistent sadness. This can be attributed to a particular event or have no origin at all. Major depression destroys a person's joy. Food, friends, and hobbies no longer have a meaning or are enjoyable. While sadness is the main symptom, it is required that 5 of the following 9 symptoms be present for at least 2 weeks to be described as major depression. Irritability, decreased interest in most activities, significant weight change or change in one's appetite, change in sleep patterns, major reduction in activity level, fatigue, feelings of worthlessness, diminished concentration levels, and having plans or thoughts of suicide. Mental illness is often seen as the cause of suicide. While it is a major factor according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than half of all Americans that ended their life from suicide did not have a previously diagnosed mental health condition. Major contributing factors to suicide include relational problems, a recent crisis, substance abuse, failing health, and job or financial distress. Sometimes those who are contemplating suicide refuse to say anything. Warning signs can include isolating themselves, talking and feeling hopeless, feeling trapped, feeling like a burden to others, an increase in drug and alcohol abuse, acting anxious or agitated and behaving recklessly, sleeping too much or too little, and talk about wanting to die. Evidence shows that simple measures such as talking to someone in crisis and staying in contact with that individual can have considerable effect on how the idea of suicide is played out. The relationship between money and happiness has been studied for decades, and the general findings are that money does affect an individual's level of happiness, but only to a certain point. Evidence supports that after basic needs are met, increases in wealth do not affect one's happiness. Senior citizens rate their satisfaction with life higher than that of college-age individuals. Research shows that children start out as happy and joyful. Then their cheerfulness starts to decline after 18 years of age through their early 50s. The crazy part is that when people start losing things like appearance, mental sharpness, energy, they seem to regain that happiness. People that are educated tend to have high-paying jobs and live in economically stable cities. However, in 23 studies, investigators concluded that IQ does not influence our happiness either positively or negatively. Research shows that people who fare best in life are people that put effort into relationships with family, friends, and community. Quality of relationships was the single largest factor that predicted one's happiness, health, and even mental stability. According to the Handbook of Religion and Health, there is a positive effect of religious faith on several emotional and mental issues. More specifically, religious people have lower rates of depression and have much lower rates of suicide than that of non-religious individuals. They are also better to cope with a crisis such as illness, divorce, or bereavement. Religious individuals also report a much higher rate of life satisfaction than that of non-religious individuals. Mental First Aid is an evidence-based program that helps non-professionals like students, faculty, staff assist others dealing with mental health problems. The goal in critical mental health situations is, like in CPR, to provide support until professional assistance arrives. The 5-step strategy for providing mental first aid include assessing for risk of suicide or harm, listening to that person non-judgmentally and giving them all of your attention. Give reassurance and information of what their options are. Encourage appropriate professional help and encourage self-help and support strategies to deal with whatever is going wrong with that person. When somebody is obviously a danger to themselves or others, it is pretty easy to determine that professional help is required. Now, this always doesn't mean that it's going to be severe or suicide related to suicide. It could be just as little as having some problems within your life that are not life-threatening. Major types of healthcare professionals include counselors. Now, these are the first professionals that many individuals look for help. Counselors generally have a wide variety of subspecialties such as addiction and substance abuse, grief, depression, and suicide. Psychologists have an earned doctorate degree from an accredited institution and have years of training meeting state requirements and rules. They are, however, not able to write prescriptions for medications. Psychiatrists are licensed medical doctors who have completed a year-long internship and a 3-year residency that provides training in various forms of psychotherapy, psychopharmacology, and inpatient and outpatient treatment for mental disorders. They can prescribe medications and make medical decisions. It has been suggested that all human motivation can be summed up by 2 drives: the desire for pleasure and the avoidance of pain. We are drawn toward love, joy, and happiness while wanting to stay clear of anxiety, grief, and sadness. One of life's obstacles to believe that God is at work in both pleasure and pain and is aimed toward our highest good.